All right, guys, a few people slow down joining. Nice one. Really appreciate the time today. Hope everyone's had a good day. Um, so a couple of things really to update you guys on. First one is the white paper. That's been the main priority. I know a lot of you are kind of pushing us to get it out. Um, what we've actually been doing, me and Tan actually spent a few hours before just going through some of the legal counsel and some of Matthew's comments on the tech stack. It's pretty good. We just got to rephrase a few things. Then we're sending it off to the graphic designer today, actually, or tomorrow, just to knock out some graphics for it. And then we should have a first draft ready for release. I want to say this week, if not early next week. But pretty much close to the finish line now. I know everybody, you guys have been waiting for that. In terms of the product development, most of the resources have been allocated on getting the Vietnamese team set up. Lockdown has eased up now, so it's much easier for office workers to come together, and it's much easier to plan, start hiring, expanding the dev team. We've got some technical resources from PVCon Bank, which is fantastic. It means that we don't lose anything from the lockdowns and stuff. And then we've also got a private company that we're looking at offering us services. I mean, they're so eager to use the product. They basically said, if we can help you deploy it faster, will you give us a discounted, rate for X amount of transactions? So that's something we're exploring as well, which is great. We've spoke to a couple more blockchain protocols. They seem to be interested in offering us grants, but they come with certain community guidelines. And to be honest, we're not really needing or in the space for grants right now. I mean, obviously everything helps marketing, so we're exploring it, but some of the grants seem to be a bit more towards technical resources that we just don't have right now. The biggest focus for us is getting the VMNT side set up, and then basically connecting to the accounts we've got with Prime Trust, running some test transactions, and then deploying straight away. So I'm hopefully looking forward to get some transactions going this year. And then essentially what we've got is a corridor between Vietnam and the US that's 100% compliant, that we're running 2 million unique transactions at less than $1 cost. So that's an instant monetized channel that we've got. Two things that are exciting for this really is, so one's being Vietnam is about $18 billion yearly annual remittance. So even if we corner 1% of the market share, what's that, like 180 million? And we're working with partners that have over 1% of people using, e-wallets, digital payment, and working with different digital POSs as well. So getting 1% of the market wouldn't be too difficult. Trying to get 1% of the market share of the remittance is obviously one of the biggest challenges, but at least we'll be deployed on the ground with over 1% of Vietnamese citizens. We've also we've re-engaged a couple of the processes on the ground. Someone was talking to us about retailers. Now we're not really focusing on retailers. What we're focusing on is essentially the retail interaction. We think this is the biggest way, the fastest way to adopt a lot of these retail merchants. So yeah, essentially speaking to ZaloPay, Mocha, and some of the others, they seem to be quite keen. We've also spoken to some service provider merchants on the ground, like F&B industry and stuff. They're pretty interested in giving it a test rollout once we get the Vietnamese side up. There's obviously some other important kind of developments with PVCon Bank that I can't really discuss right now, but everything's super positive. PVCon Bank is incredibly eager to get us going. And then one of the blockchain protocols that we are directly partnering with to deploy this solution, they're actually really eager to kind of push across Southeast Asia. So they're looking at us to support a lot of their expansion as well into the region, which is always interesting. It means that we basically have support on both sides, from the banking side in Vietnam, from the tech stack in basically the protocol provider, the blockchain network that we're working with, and then the trust company in the US. They're super eager to do something with Vietnamese dong. So the relationship with PVCon Bank and Prime Trust, we might be able to facilitate something there. So all the key players are super interested. It's been a bit tough, obviously, working with the white paper. We're going through a lot of the financial forecasts now with the new CFO, who's fantastic, by the way. And he's super eager to get started. He really wants to get an early jump on things, kind of put the ducks in a row before we kind of go out there and start seeking like capital partners and stuff, liquidity providers, etc. So yeah, everything's pretty good. Everything's good. The only thing that's slowing us down is legal, obviously. But I'm sure you guys have seen that Circle have kind of abandoned a lot of their regulatory routes, as we predicted several months ago. You know, either it was just a PR stunt, or it was more of a case of they just didn't anticipate how difficult the regulation would be, which is something that a lot of you guys know is one of our biggest downfalls, really, is kind of navigating this bureaucratic space. But it's all good. Jill's supporting us with a couple of reviewals of some documents that we've got as we kind of set a satellite office up in Vietnam. We are discussing a few other Vemanti related things, not necessarily USD related, but we're looking to do a big expansion into Vietnam with a few projects launched. So there's a few teams that are being kind of developed right now. A good mixture. I think majority are going to be based in Vietnam. There's going to be a few that are based out of US, and then there might be some people kind of working remotely, as you know, the world's kind of decentralized now. But yeah, so with the industry news, I'm sure you people have seen the Evergrande kind of default as well. You know, it's pretty interesting that a lot of USDT was actually backed by bonds of Evergrande. So it's going to be interesting to see if Evergrande don't get bailed out, what effects that going to have on you know, Tether and Bitfinex and kind of the USDT as a whole. We do anticipate some kind of shockwaves throughout the industry, but it's something that we've been calling for. You know, these kind of stable coins, they definitely need to be regulated and held, especially when, you know, if you're less than 3% back in the event of something like this Evergrande bailout, we can imagine there's going to be a lot more than 3% of users rushing out to redeem USDT. I'm not too sure if USDC want to try and catch some of that fallout. We do know that USDV needs to be in a position to catch a lot of these people that lose interest. But what we've learned is that the majority of USDT isn't actually held in USDT, not by users anyway. Most of it is held by exchanges as a means of facilitation. You know, AMMs, professional market makers, large cap market makers, a lot of OTC desks, a lot of, you know, resource agents, a lot of resellers, etc. So it doesn't actually seem to be people using USDT. It's just merely there as a means of facilitation. So even with Circle abandoning a lot of the regulatory routes, you know, this just kind of reinforces a lot of what we're doing with USDV. You know, we are paving the way for, we're sure that people will come behind us, but there's no one ahead of us. So it's really difficult for us to kind of learn from other people's previous mistakes. We can see from a lot of, you know, OG companies like BitPay, for example, they've been around for nearly 10 years now, I think, just under. They kind of locked themselves through classification. You know, a lot of people tried to reclassify themselves as something else to try and avoid regulation years ago. What's that kind of done is put them in a box. You know, they can't grow, they can't scale, they can't add new features. It's relatively, it's not very cost effective to rebrand or relaunch as a separate product service. So, you know, a lot of these businesses just kind of fall by the way lines because there's nothing else we can do really. This is the problem that we're definitely avoiding with USDV. You know, as we deploy and as we bring on ecosystem partners, this is where the rigorous DD comes in, because we don't want any problems further down the line. So as we scale and we bring in more backing partners, we're going to be more focused on a fintech play of stablecoin rather than you know, a means of facilitation like USDT and stuff. But that's pretty much it for a brief update. Before we open it to questions, I'll introduce Dan. Sorry, is it Dan or Daniel? What do you prefer?
It doesn't matter. Daniel, jackass.
Daniel.
I don't care.
I'd like to introduce you to Daniel. He's the investor relations consultant that's hopefully speak a bit more of your guys' lingo. There's a few things that Daniel can speak about that we're not necessarily able to phrase. But Daniel's a very smart guy. He's brought in some good network partners and had some interesting discussions so far. So I'll let Daniel introduce himself.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's my pleasure. I know you can't talk back, so you can't say good evening or anything like that. But so you guys, I understand, on the whole, had some concerns with the drifting of the stock. I think you may have noticed some sort of turnaround in not only the volume, but the price of the stock and some of the excitement surrounding it. I don't know if any of you actually know my background. Some of you might have looked me up. Some of you might have, dug around a little bit, got a little information. Some of the companies I've worked with in the past. I take on, over the last probably 21 years, one or two companies a year. I tend to have a talent for finding truly undervalued companies with serious fundamentals or a legitimate disruptive technology in a specific space, whether it's a crowded space or not, is a moot point. If you've got what I believe to be a breakout technology in a space and it is legitimately disruptive, I want to make an investment in that company. What I have is it's not my personal money that I invest. I've got about 4,000 retail brokers across the country. There is nobody in my book of business with less than $100 million under management. I've been working with at least those 4,000 brokers for 21 years. I started off, like anybody else, relatively new to the industry, with about a 15-year business management consulting background. It was all about efficiency, productivity, profitability, space utilization, personnel, and relationships, etc. When I got into this space, I didn't really understand what investor relations was. The only time I'd even heard the term was about back in the you're familiar with the Kennedy family in Boston, and in the 1920s when there's depression, that's what they called it. It was a sort of a form of extortion to get the Kennedy family to back your publicly traded entity that was down huge in the depression. You could pay them and they would say they love your company and your stock would go up. Pretty simple. I guess that's kind of the birth of investor relations. There's no boiler room stuff going on here. I do not have a big office with 30 phone monkeys dialing for dollars, hoping they can get the broker of the day to buy 500 shares of the stock. This is an established network, 20 plus years. They're all seasoned brokers. Nobody with less than 10 years on the job. Nobody with less than 100 million under management. When you get to certain levels, and one of the things I have to explain, the volume right now is pretty good. When you get to certain levels, certain percentage of my network opens up as far as the availability that they can buy the stock. Different firms have different compliance restrictions. If you call somebody at Merrill Lynch and you show him this stock, he's going to love it. He's going to laugh his ass off because he can't buy it. It's under $5 a share. It's not listed on a national market. They can't touch it other than their personal account. And a lot of times they can't even do that. So if you understand the way this levels up, I've got guys that are independents, private wealth, legitimate, documented, accredited investors. They've made a lot of money with me over a long period of time. Essentially, what they're doing is rolling the profit from the last half a dozen projects that I work with them on into the next deal that I take on. I was referred to this company specifically by one of my guys who's a funding source, and loved the company, wanted me to get involved, knew it was undervalued, and in addition to being fundamentally undervalued, also had a legitimate disruptive technology in what was becoming a hot sector and a pretty fast moving space, and having success in an arena where everybody else was failing miserably. That's what intrigued me. That's what made me decide to put it out to my network. I go through my book. I go to the guys who don't have any compliance restrictions. They are the first guys in. They buy size, they hold long, they tuck it away for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then look back and see how much money they made. That's how it works. When we get to $1, another 15, 16% of my book becomes available because they can't buy it under $1. They will come in at $1. They will buy size. They will hold long. They will not sell it until I've told them I think it's peaked. I'm not an investment advisor. I do not carry a Series 7 license. I'm not offering any investment advice to anybody. I'm simply pointing in the direction of a company that I've done my due diligence on and telling them to look at it. When you get to $3, it opens up another 20% of my book. And essentially, they do the same thing that everybody in the beginning did. They buy big, they hold long, and they forget about it until such time as the company is delivered on the fundamentals we're expecting. At $5, same thing with the big boys. When you uplist to a national market, there is nobody in my book of business that cannot buy the stock. They buy big, they hold long, and they forget about it until it's time to, take a peek at how they're doing. I don't know what the company's time frame specifically is on a potential uplist to the NASDAQ national market or other national market. I know that they were looking at sometime in the second half of 2022, and that is their, that's the company line on when they expect to go to the NASDAQ. I do not believe personally, and this is opinion, and understand everything I'm telling you with regards to what I believe the trading of the stock. It's my personal opinion, and the company's made sure that I let you know it's my personal opinion, but it's based on 21 years of experience and having success at this. I don't think it takes until late 2022 to uplist to the NASDAQ based on what these guys have, based on having looked at other companies in the space. They are so far ahead of the game, it is ridiculous, and is the primary reason from a compliance standpoint. They were compliance first, make sure that all the regulatory agencies understand that they are only interested in being compliant, and then providing a superior product as far as the crypto is concerned, and something user friendly, robust. All the bugs are out and ready to rock. But the compliance is the major issue, and the compliance where everybody else is failing. These guys handled what they should have handled first. It was very intriguing to most of my brokers. Even guys who can't buy it are trying to find a way to buy it. Based on the information that I've got thus far, there's nobody that has launched a legitimate stable coin or done an S1 for a legitimate stable coin or anything like that in the United States. I believe this will be, and again, personal opinion, I believe this will be the first ever S1 registration of a cryptocurrency, a stable coin. That in itself is huge when it comes to the trading of the stock and where it can go. When they deliver a robust, user-friendly product, in addition to being first, I believe there almost has to be widespread adoption of that particular coin. That being said, the better the coin performs, the more user-friendly and robust it is, the better the stock will perform. I'm betting my entire network on the fact that these guys are far enough ahead of the game and have it together enough that I want to put all my money in it, my network's money in it. And they are in full agreement. I've got an attorney in Florida here who is a published author on the blockchain space, cryptocurrency, multiple published author. She's brilliant. She is the vice chair for the Florida Bar Association's technology team, which basically sets the regulations and oversees all attorneys in the state of Florida with regards to blockchain, cryptocurrency transactions, and legal. She's a genius. She looked at this in great detail. She had a conversation on a Zoom call with myself and Tan today, and she wants to buy the stock, if that tells you anything. She is very impressed with the progress they've made from the compliance standpoint, from the regulatory standpoint. She's very impressed with what Warren is doing, and she's very impressed with what Tan is doing, and is going to very likely help us to establish partner banks in other companies where she consults on blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies, including in the US. I think this thing moves a whole lot further, a whole lot faster than anybody else is thinking, including the CEO and the management team and Warren and everybody else that's been in this thing for quite some time. And I'm going to help it along because I'm going to buy the stock, likely the entire float, and you are welcome to enjoy the ride with me. But the wherewithal that we have as a network, yes, I can buy 26 million shares of the stock over the next several months. And generally speaking, volume precedes price. I think I told you on the thread this morning that I was going to spike the hell out of this thing beginning tomorrow with some larger tickets. And that's exactly what's going to happen, because that's what I'm going to ask my network to do, because they should. I believe in it. I'm going to buy into it. I'm going to buy into it with literally tens of millions of dollars. And you're going to see it in the open market, because that's where I do my best work.
I mean, yeah, we don't know actually if we don't know what effect that might have on the price or anything.
Well,
you know, we can't. I'm just trying to say.
I'm not
compliant.
stating that as a fact. I'm saying volume precedes price. Generally speaking, it does not have an adverse effect on the price of the stock when you've got massive amounts of buying coming in on the offer side of the board, which is all I do.
I appreciate the fine comments, Daniel. It means a lot, really. I'm just glad that we've got someone that can see a little bit closer, really, a bit more of the picture. And I mean, I totally share the excitement, to be honest. I mean, once you kind of see everything and you see the working parts, you know, it kind of does blow you away a little bit. And we have realized over the past few months that, you know, there is a big reason why no one's done this before. But maybe we can just open it up to the group if anyone's got any questions. No? No one's got any questions?
That's amazing.
That's a new one.
Hey, Dan. Larry here.
Hey, Larry.
Hey, you come across much better when talking than you do writing. But can we get a name on that lawyer that you were mentioning?
Her name is Anessa, Anessa Santos, Santos. She's a guru when it comes to this stuff, and she was extremely pleasantly surprised, having gone over all the information on Prime, having gone over all the information on Vemanti. She was very, very impressed. You can look her up. When it comes to experts, she's the top of the game.
I'm looking her up. I'm on it now.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for hopping on the call. This is James, by the way. I just had a quick question. So I know you said that the company management expects to be on NASDAQ second half of 2022. You think it could happen sooner. My understanding is NASDAQ, you have to maintain a certain bid price in order to get on, have a certain amount, like size market cap. Do you see anything else potentially limiting the company from getting onto NASDAQ other than, you know, meeting the bid price and having the market cap?
Well, first of all, that's inaccurate. It doesn't have to be a specific market cap. Your market, whether or not you can uplist to NASDAQ, whether or not you get approved, that is something that is negotiable. And that is, you know, obviously it's at the discretion of the powers that be at NASDAQ. You don't have to be $5 and maintain a $500 million market cap to list on NASDAQ. They just have to like what you're doing and the direction you're headed. And you have to have, you know, a reasonable price. You know, it's got to be folding money, not the kind that jingles, to uplist the NASDAQ. There are NASDAQ companies right now that trade 50 cents on a dollar. Now, they may have fallen from higher numbers, but they haven't been delisted yet because the NASDAQ likes what they're doing, likes the direction they're heading, and knows the fundamentals will be there that will obviously increase the price of the stock based on the fundamentals. But you can negotiate with NASDAQ the actual uplisting and the parameters that you have to meet with them. What was the second half of the question again? I'm sorry.
I guess that was essentially it. I was wondering if there had to be like a certain number of like revenue numbers that had to come in for the company in order to be on NASDAQ, but seems like that's not the case.
Yeah, they have their standards. I don't foresee any roadblocks for the company in hitting the numbers they expect to hit and hitting numbers that would be amenable to NASDAQ, uplisting them based on their technology and their fundamentals and their compliance. If I did, I probably wouldn't be buying in like I'm buying in.
Daniel, if you wouldn't mind, could you speak on the share structure of Vemanti? Obviously, we know the technology behind USDV is what everybody's so excited about. Can you shed a little light on the share structure behind Vemanti and how easily or how that will help based off the low float, the low amount of shares available?
I keep hearing low float, and I'm looking at 26 million plus shares on DTCs tradable right now that could be sold tomorrow morning all at once. Take this thing sub penny. It's not going to happen, but there's 26 million shares, a lot of stock, and that's just the float. But given what the company has done, given where they are, given how far ahead of the game they are, and how many other companies with really unlimited resources like Facebook, for instance, Carlos Slim Halou, you've seen Circle, you've seen other companies. Given how far along they are, I think they're going to need that many shares out there. I've heard talk of, the company needs a forward split to create some liquidity in the stock. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The forward split, a reverse split, any kind of split does nothing but invite in shorts, invite sellers, and piss people off. Wall Street hates a split, whether you believe it or not. You have to be screaming northward as far as your stock price and getting to a point where your average Joe can't afford to buy a few shares before you even consider any kind of split. The capital structure of the company is good for what they have because there's enough shares out there to satisfy the liquidity in the market. At some point, if it goes the way I think it's going to go, there may be a forward split in the future, but it's going to be at a whole hell of a lot higher stock price. As far as the overall capital structure, it's perfect for what the company is.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Warren, I know Daniel mentioned briefly about the potential use in the United States. How much effort, if any, are you guys putting into finding partnerships and creating a place where USDV can be utilized in the United States?
So essentially, since everything's US compliant, we can operate as standard in the US. What we're counting on is regulation coming in the future. So what we believe USDC is either going to be forced to fractionalize, so make several different fiat baskets under a different brand of USD, and then just have like a domestic stablecoin. What we're anticipating is the ability to swoop in and kind of capture a lot of that offshore use case. So remittance and foreign payments and transfers, we're talking like $1 trillion market that we're just primed for. A lot of the banking rails that we have, they're kind of built on these systems from like 40, 50 years ago, right? So one of the reasons there's a few reasons PVCom Bank in Vietnam are interested. One of them is that we can help them bring users in to make new accounts. We can bring users in that want to use financial instruments like credit lines and credit cards and stuff. But then also we can facilitate a relatively capital controlled region. We can facilitate a lot of the in and out transactions. So in terms of how much effort we're being applied into networks and biz dev and stuff, that's pretty much the majority of the time that we're not working on either development meetings or strategy, or this white paper, for instance. It's normally several phone calls a day of speaking to different partners. While I'm in Bali in Indonesia, I've managed to meet someone from BNI and Mandiri banks that are interested in looking at a solution for foreign tourists coming to Bali. Because obviously, being an island, you're hit with quite expensive ATM fees. Everywhere charges like 3 to 5% on card payments. And even wiring money is, somewhat sketchy because you essentially have to pick up cash and then walk around with like a few $1,000s. And then the fees, on top of that as well. So we know that there's definitely huge demand in Indonesia as well. So we're kind of putting the time I'm here to good use at the same time. In terms of how much effort is going to be put into providing a use case for USDV, essentially that's going to come organically. What we're providing is the financial instruments and then utilizing USDV to kind of provide the fluidity between all of these. So, for example, the PVCom Bank relationship, people opening credit lines, may be required to stake a certain amount of USDV or hold a certain amount in their account to, kind of give an automatic overdraft, for instance. So the use case kind of comes up organically as we work with these different partners. And what we're finding is for every one or two that we speak to, we get 2 or 3 that are approaching us and saying, hey, we want to learn more about, compliant stablecoin. People are asking for liquidity. Part of the issue is people, some of these large exchanges, as I mentioned in the past, are expecting essentially us to fill out the order book on both sides just to provide liquidity for them. And obviously there's market making fees and there's a whole bunch of expenses that come with it. So we're currently trying to negotiate with a lot of these exchanges and basically explain to them that we're not an airbag token. We can't just give them $1 million just to list. So we're trying to put the onus on the exchanges to come to us and say, would you like to list us? Okay. Obviously there has to be some sort of listing fee involved. But in terms of providing the order book liquidity, that's something that we're kind of negotiating with a few of them right now. We've got a few solutions for it. We're basically trying to incentivize a lot of these large cap firms to come in and mint. There's a lot of crypto platforms out there that I've mentioned in the past in some of the calls, where we can actually subsidize a lot of the interest. One of the biggest things that Circle kind of removed or completely dropped is this interest yield. What we want to do is essentially facilitate that in a compliant fashion. One of the ways that we anticipate that for now is working with third-party partners and essentially subsidizing the interest they have. I think hopefully that gives you a pretty good answer. Is there anything that I missed off the question?
No, great answer. Thank you very much, Warren. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Open floor, anyone? If anyone's got any other questions from myself or Daniel. Open format, guys. No need to be shy. If there's no other questions, that's fine. Feel free to write them in the group as well.
Daniel, in your opinion, would you say one of the most attractive things about Vemanti is the fact that they are having an S1 and it will be like the first cryptocurrency with institutional funding? Is that, would you say, like one of the big straws for you to the company?
Of course, first to market is always appealing. It just makes sense, doesn't it?
Oh, I think we lost Daniel then.
I'm here. Can you not hear me?
I think it cut out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. No, what I was saying is first to market is always appealing, obviously, but in a space that's becoming a very hot sector where others are failing and you're succeeding at a level just undreamed of at the moment, of course that's appealing. That's one of the big reasons for the decision to bring the network in.
Got it. Thank you. So Dan, this might be more of a personal question, but like in your past 21 years working with your network, what would you say was like the biggest success that you had that basically made everyone the most money?
It's hard to say. I mean, they average between, I don't know, 500 and 1,000% gains. Connects is probably the best story. They were already a NASDAQ company. They were trading $11.50 a share, trading about, I think, 40,000 shares a day. And I made an appointment with the CEO and CFO to come up and talk to them about what I bring to the table, what I could do. And I was sitting in there. Obviously, I looked at their fundamentals. This is a company that had 4.2 million shares, I think it was, issued and outstanding total. And the float was 6 figures. And they were doing $750 million annually with a 68% EBITDA. That's net profit. Their stock was worth $45 a share walking in the door. And they're at 11.50, trading 40,000 shares a day. You're on the NASDAQ, and I'll go into a little more, but I sat in their boardroom and I looked at the CEO and the CFO, Rudy, the CEO. I looked at him and I said, so $11.50, trading on the NASDAQ, 40,000 shares a day. And he looks so proud. And he looks at me and says, it's not bad, right? I said, it's fucking embarrassing. And he said, excuse me? I said, I apologize for cursing, but I mean, I didn't know how to really get my point across as to how embarrassed I am for you and for your company, and frankly for your CFO, who should know what the valuation of your company should be. And he said, really? I said, yeah. I said, you guys are doing $750 million at a 68% EBITDA, 4.2 million shares outstanding. Any novice broker can do the math and come up with $45 a share minimum. And that's not counting anything you've got that you're going to book in the next quarter. That's not counting any new contracts. That's just based on what you've done, not what you're going to do. And he looked at me and said, are you kidding me? I said, no, I'm not kidding. I said, look, I have a contract in my hand, and I slid it over to him across his own conference room table. I said, you're going to sign that. You're going to give me 50,000 cash a month. You're going to give me 10,000 shares a month. And I'm going to take your company to where it should fundamentally trade. And really, that's all. And he looked at me and said, $50,000 a month. He said, I don't pay myself that. I said, okay. And I picked up my cell phone and I called Josh Pessin, who was the head of institutional trading at the time at Bishop Rosen. You're welcome to look him up. Josh answers the phone. What's going on, Dano? I said, I need you to take a look at a symbol. I need you to pull up their K. So he pulls up the symbol. He pulls up their information on sec.gov, and he looks at their K. He says, are these numbers right? I said, yeah. He goes, hey, you know what? Can you hang on a second? I just got to take a call. It's one of my clients is a pain in the ass. I'll be right back. I said, okay. So I know what he's doing. I take my phone, I open up my Ameritrade app, and I turn it towards the CEO of the company. Stock was 1150, trading an average of 40,000 shares a day, maybe. And it trades 250,000 shares in 30 seconds. It goes to 13 and a half. Signed the contract, wrote me a check, issued my shares on the spot. A month later, the stock was 33. And in the second month of my contract, at about $36 a share, IBM buys the whole company at 46. And the funniest thing is, I had a good 100 brokers call me that bought into this thing and made 400 and 500% and say, Borders, you're an asshole. I said, why? And he said, you told us that stock was worth $45 a share. I said, yeah. He goes, IBM paid 46. You were wrong. And they were in their glory that I was off by $1. That's probably the best success story. And
Got
you're
it. Thanks
welcome
for
to
sharing.
check. You're welcome to check with Rudy Carson, the former CEO of Conexa Corporation. He'll tell you the first thing out of Boer's mouth was he was fucking embarrassed for me and swore at me in my own conference room. But I did my job, and that's all I do. You don't have to like me to make money with me. But if you make enough money with me, you're going to like me even if you don't want to.
Good problem to have, I suppose.
I think so.
Hey,
Hey,
Daniel.
Daniel. Oh, go
This
ahead,
is
Doug.
Douglas. Oh, hey, Luke.
No, you're good, Doug.
Hey, Daniel. This is Douglas McGill. A couple questions. Just how would you value Vemanti? Because if you look at the filings, in the past it was an IP company, and so it doesn't say that much of all the financials are about when it was voice over IP company, and doesn't really speak to the future of the company. And then just based on your story you just said, how did you convince Tan to contract you?
Tan didn't contact me. I was referred by one of the funding sources of the company and one of the bigger shareholders. They told him I could do the job, and he, of course, he is the king of playing devil's advocate. He said, "Show me," so I did. That's it.
Tan played the devil's advocate.
Yeah, Tan is a doubter by nature.
How did you
Glad to
show
hear it.
him? In what way?
I mean, you've seen the volume in the stock lately, right? You see it in the green a few days in a row, which has been a while since that happened, right?
Correct. I just
Probably
didn't know if this
not
was.
coincidence. Yeah,
I just didn't
probably
know if
not
this was
coincidence.
weeks ago or some other time.
Days ago, I had already looked at it, but my friend really wanted me to actually talk to Tan and kind of find out where they were at. It's the fact that they had so much of the compliance work done, rounds of comments done. They were so overly prepared for the regulatory agencies that I found it refreshing. Even Anessa was surprised. They had a code of ethics actually posted on the website. Nobody in this space does that. That's a statement, and it's a bold statement. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it right, and there's nothing you can say or do to change that. We're going to do it the right way. The future of this company is the guy that was talking before me, Warren. He's going to make sure that the product is exactly what you hope it'll be. And that's what's going to take this company to the next level. And of course, a little bit of money in the market won't hurt.
Hey, Daniel, just a quick question. Were you watching a certain price where the stock hit before you started to buy in and elevate the stock price, or what triggered the communication in the Telegram chat?
Dan's signature on a piece of paper that had my letterhead. I wanted to buy it previously. I could lie to you. I wanted to buy the stock before when my guy Oz first introduced it. But I figured if I'm going to go buy millions of dollars worth of stock, I'm going to get paid. So what triggered the buying was Tan signing my contract. Really. I assume you just wanted me to be honest, right?
Yeah, and thank you for answering, honestly. But yeah, I was curious about that. Why now? Why that price? And hey, we like it. It sounds good. Let's keep it going.
I will do my best.
Daniel?
Still here.
Okay. Now, is it possible for you to elaborate a little bit more on the contract? I don't know if there is there any kind of termination date or objective goal, something that you can mention?
It's a fully reporting company. You can read the 8K.
Hey, I don't know if you're the Telegram, but what was your from your past experiences for the past 20 some odd years? What was your takeaway after talking? And I assume you guys met or just Zoomed or something. What was your takeaway of Tan personally after your discussions over the past few days?
Again, I keep referring to the same thing, but I was excited about the fact that he was much more concerned with real people, with actual compliance, with being ahead of the curve as far as the compliance. They're not just prepared for the current infrastructure, and this is Tan's doing. They weren't just prepared for the current regulatory infrastructure. They're prepared for the coming regulatory infrastructure as it morphs into whatever it's going to be when they finalize it. And that was impressive to me. His knowledge of the space is next to no one that I've spoken to. And I mean, he's pretty direct. He's like me in that he's very direct, doesn't pull punches. I mean, he basically told me on the initial conversation, if you can't do the job, I'm going to know in 24 hours, and I'm going to cane you anyway. I'm still here. I'll be honest with you. There are those on this thread in this group, and there are those within the company, including legal, that doesn't like the fact that I'm quite as positive on this as I am, or my personal opinion that it won't take as long to accomplish many of the milestones that they're looking to accomplish is not as far off as they think. They're pissed that I said that, but I believe it, so I said it. And they can be mad at me if they want. Hell, they can fire me if they want. I'm going to buy it anyway, but I'm going to get paid to buy it.
We appreciate it.
Hey, Daniel and Warren. First of all, thanks for setting up the call. I know we all really appreciate it. One thing I wanted to ask is, I think we know that basically institutional investors are what's going to ultimately really move this stock. Are you working with the CFO at all to get those institutional investors? And I know there's talks of like $10 and all that kind of stuff. Is it your network and your buying that you think is going to run towards that $10, then the institutional buying will buy those shares? Or I'm just wondering how you think that's going to work out.
Yeah, I mean,
or what your plan is.
and again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to understand that it's opinion based on my experience. Generally speaking,
Right.
institutional investors do not come into an issue until you've uplisted to a national market in most cases. Even in an extraordinary case as this, generally speaking, it's got to be a certain number, and it varies from wirehouse to wirehouse where they can buy or where they want to buy it, what their sweet spot is. And there's no guarantee any institutional investor is going to come into the issue. I've got about 18 institutional investors that are watching it. I do have analysts in my network. I do have institutional investors in my network. When it hits certain levels, I expect them personally to do what they've always done with companies that I've worked with, that I've taken on as clients, and that is to buy large size. Generally speaking, the institutional investors and Wall Street itself will take out investors like my independent brokers, individual brokers, the money managers. I don't know if you guys understand how brokerage houses really work nowadays. You go and you sit down with your broker, and he tells you how many wonderful things he's going to do for you, and how much money he's going to make you, and he's going to get you ready for retirement. Brokers nowadays, and most of these wirehouses, take your money when you make your deposit, or you drop off a check to go into your trading account or annuity or whatever the hell it is they're doing for you, and they hand it over to a money manager who realistically is just the most successful broker in the firm's history and now manages the money for the entire firm, and they just kind of hand it over. Your broker, generally speaking, doesn't ordinarily do anything with your money, doesn't trade it, puts it in an annuity if you ask them to, puts it in an IRA, sets up a 529 for your kids or whatever. But with regards to trading individual equities and buying into funds, etc., it's always the money manager. It's not your broker. My brokers are a different breed. They're all older. They're all experienced. They all have a certain amount of money under management and generally don't have to adhere specifically to most of the compliance restrictions other than price restrictions and listing restrictions. But I mean, I can't guarantee that anybody's going to come and take you out at $10 a share. I can't guarantee it ever sees $10 a share. I can tell you what I believe. And I believe
Right.
I believe on the whole, long term, that's a low number. If these guys execute like they've been executing to date, 10's low. And that's, again, it's opinion, but it's, I guess you can call it an educated opinion.
Right. Thanks, Daniel.
No problem.
Daniel,
Daniel, do you? Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, go ahead. I don't.
Yeah, I was going to say, Daniel, do you have a timeline of adoption of this technology that Vemanti has? I guess in your opinion, do you see that adoption earlier with financial institutions and on a global scale in the U.S. Earlier than later?
I mean, first to market adoption is, if you're the first to market adoption, is almost automatic. I can't predict the saturation. I can't predict an adoption rate of the technology. I mean, that's a better question for Warren than it is for me. He'd be able to answer that more intelligently than I could.
Sure. So we've essentially mapped out the 3-year kind of FinPro. Years 4 and 5 were always a bit, kind of random. So we're just really focusing on a 3-year realistic FinPro. Steve's doing a fantastic job of helping us kind of rein everything in and get everything in line. And then obviously we're basing a lot of data from alternative competitive products like TransferWise and N26, looking at the adoption rates for Cash App and Venmo. Then we're comparing that to different regions in Southeast Asia and looking at different PSP adoption, different retail merchants. I mean, somewhere in Indonesia is vastly different to Vietnam. I mean, we do anticipate being able to secure, at least 1% of the market share of the remittance channel between Vietnam and the US alone, right? Very easy for us to deploy this tech stack into different regions, across Southeast Asia, as I mentioned before. So even 1% market share, we're talking about 180 million USD, right, every year. The whole entire financial corridor is 18 billion annually. The solution that we have is 2 million different unique transactions at a dollar cost. There's no way that these legacy banks and these other service providers can essentially ignore us. That's why when we approach big firms like TransferWise and PayPal and stuff and offer to facilitate a lot of their rails, we can do so at a much more manageable cost than any competitor can. So even if someone did come to try and threaten our market stake or try to poach users, through a variety of ways, either we can clone their strategies or we can undercut them on price. So in terms of the adoption, I mean, we anticipate everyone that's transferring money is going to be focused on low fees. That's always the number one. Can I trust it? Is it fast? Is it cheaper? That's normally what people ask when they're looking at a new service provider. For a lot of people abroad or a lot of economic migrants, it's more of a case of can I use it? But what we're seeing with the growth rate of USDV, as we kind of touched upon before, is really looking at the use case, right? The use cases are going to come organically with these financial instruments. So when people have access to these financial instruments that they never have before, of course, it's going to be extremely attractive for them. So obviously, I don't want to speculate numbers right now, but we anticipate to hold market share quite quickly and for quite a long time.
Warren, is it safe to assume that with the white paper coming out imminently, that the SEC has already seen it and knows what's up with USDV, and they're not going to be all throwing a hissy fit when it comes out?
That I'm not too sure of. I don't believe that they've seen the white paper document, but I do know that we were preparing a very extensive doc, basically outlining a lot of the strategies, what we intend to do. So there's not much that we've tried to keep it vague enough that explains everything we're doing, but gives us a lot of leeway. As far as I'm aware, the answer that came back was, okay, thanks for telling us, proceed at your own risk. They didn't tell us off. They didn't say, you should rethink this aspect. They just basically just said, okay, seems all right. And then just let us carry on. So we're not really anticipating any kind of issues from them in terms of them coming back and saying you didn't tell us about this. As far as I'm aware, we've disclosed everything quite extensively, while still giving us a little room to scale, or to essentially was that someone yawning?
Yeah,
Sorry,
what was that?
Sorry, the answer was boring.
No, thank you, Warren. Appreciate
it. That was the group
someone is falling asleep
from what I'm reading.
That was the East Coast group or the one in Thailand?
Daniel?
Yes.
Two questions. One, can you disclose when you started buying shares? And two, you mentioned something about the call today that you mentioned the ability to launch in the US. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Again, that's probably a question for it. My understanding is, based on the fact that they are over-prepared for U.S. regulatory and the future U.S. regulatory changes that are about to come about, we're still prepared. And frankly, if this product was ready to go right now today, they could feasibly launch in the U.S. tomorrow. Obviously, there's some work to be done to get the product ready to go. Obviously, there's a certain amount of marketing needed to be done to help to gain adoption of the product. But yeah, I mean, from a legal standpoint, if they were prepared to launch tomorrow, they could launch tomorrow in the U.S. Is that an accurate assessment, Warren?
Yeah, essentially everything that we do is kind of guided by US compliant, because that's obviously the biggest market that we have to contend with. Obviously, a lot of these financial services, because of the strict regulation, is more attractive to people offshore. So some of you have tried the beta. You give us some initial feedback. What this MVP essentially allows us to do is give us a good ground point of where we can build out from. So yeah, I mean, obviously setting up a US to Vietnam financial rail, we need to have both sides compliant. So what we're working on now is two things in Vietnam. One is obviously domestic regulation, and the other one is the tech stack. The tech stack that we build there is going to allow us to replicate. So once we've got the US side, once we've got the Vietnam side, sorry, built out, we've already got the US side kind of finished and ready to go. This encourages that we can scale into new regions very effectively. But the thing is, even if we launch tomorrow, there's no real use case for it, right? Sure, someone can make an account, they can hold cryptocurrency, they can hold fiat side by side, but there's no use case for it. So what we're essentially doing is building out that use case. Once we have that remittance channel, then you're going to see a whole bunch of other financial instruments either being launched and based in Vietnam, looking to target globally, just domestic payments on the ground in Vietnam, and then obviously identifying the next region that we want to deploy. Yeah. Hope that gave you a good answer.
Yes, perfect.
Hey, Daniel.
By the way,
is your-
Diego, at some point, hang on a second. Diego, at some point, one of my guys is going to buy your stock. I'm telling you.
We'll see about that.
Message.
We'll see about that.
Is Diego selling?
No, I'm not selling. No, not at all.
Hey, Daniel. Is your network accustomed to buying OTC stocks, or not so much?
They're accustomed to buying whatever I believe is going to be a breakout. What I mean, they understand my background in management consulting and business in general. They understand my background in this space. Most importantly, they understand my ability to recognize, for lack of a better cliche, a diamond in the rough. I don't know how this company has not to date got more attention than they've gotten, but I assure you that's going to change in short order.
Got it. Thank you.
Daniel, I've noticed you didn't mention the date. I don't know if you cannot disclose, but when you start buying?
Day before my contract was signed, to give a little sample. You'll notice the stock traded about 133,000 shares that day. Go back and look at the trading and see which day stock traded 133,000 shares. That was sort of anomalous for what was the previous trading numbers, average daily volume wise.
Thank you.
Any other questions, guys?
So Daniel, are you going to reveal who is the person who only has 500 shares, who's bossing everyone around?
I'm waiting for Novo, Obo, and DTCs as we speak. And frankly, it's confidential information, so I can't reveal it, but I assure you I'll call them.
I can't wait.
Hey, Daniel, I had a question on this locking the flow. Can you explain that to us?
What was the question again?
Could you explain on things I heard about locking the flow? Basically, the shares you have, they can put them up for sale like at a higher number where your broker can't use them to for shorting or whatever. Could you explain that to us a little bit?
I mean, and anybody can do that. You can call your broker wherever you're holding your shares in your account, and you can request that they block your shares from being lent out to anybody that intended to short them, so that they can't be borrowed, which is the only way you can short stock other than naked. Anybody can lock their account from being borrowed against. And that's when my guys take it in, that's automatic.
Do you have to make a phone call, or can you just do it on a computer? Like, I got mine for sale now for like $30 a share.
Yeah, you have to call them.
Oh, okay. So you have to make a call. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Dan. This is Daniel. I may have missed this, or if it was addressed earlier, I apologize. I jumped on late. I'm sure it varies, but what's the just your guesstimate, I guess? What's the average length that you're brought in for consulting and I know obviously price is going to determine the length of time that your group of investors and yourself are in it, but can you give an idea of, like, in the past, obviously you have a lot of experience, what that's been?
My contracts average 6 months at a time, based on the success of renewed. In the case of Conexa, in the case of your travel business, my contracts were not renewed because the companies were bought out. In the case of a company like Estrada Corporation, my guys pulled out because they
Yeah.
got an offer from OnStar
Okay.
for a buyout.
Okay.
If you could mute yourself when your kids are yelling at you or your wife's yelling at you, that'd be great. In the case of Estrada, my guys pulled out at an average of about $3, down from about $4.50 at its peak, because they got an offer of a buyout from OnStar at $5 a share. And the CEO decided that he was going to be the next OnStar. He didn't need to get bought out. He was going to compete with them. He promptly got crushed. OnStar now owns this technology for a song.
I appreciate it, man.
Hmm?
Any other questions, guys? Alrighty. Well, Daniel, I really appreciate you stealing an hour of your time tonight. It means a lot. I'm sure the shareholders definitely seem interested in seeing another perspective.
Very happy to take the time. I'm enjoying this very much, being involved. I love deals like this.
Warren,
So
thank you,
last
Daniel.
one, a quick one for Daniel. Thanks, Warren and Daniel. But last one, Daniel, any opening price estimate for tomorrow?
I never predict price. I never predict volume. I do what I do. And when they try to play the little leapfrog game, you guys look at the trading on the stock. I know you're watching level 2, some of you. When I'm buying at 68 and someone decides to offer at 67.9, I'll take that first one. When they play the leapfrog game and they start walking it down and trying to utilize my volume to walk the price down instead of up, I sit on the bid for size. You guys will watch during the course of the day. The bid will be 1,000, 1,800 shares, and then they'll start playing that game. Then the bid will be 30 or 25,000 or 17,000. That's me not playing the game. That's all there is to it. You want to walk it down, just hit my bid, then get the hell out of the way. I'll take it all in one shot, and then I'll go back to the offer. That's how it works. I don't play games. I just buy stock. I don't allow them to manipulate the price. I don't allow them to manipulate me, and therefore you can't be manipulated either. That makes sense?
Perfect sense. Thanks, Daniel.
Very good. Hmm?
Alrighty. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Nice one again, Daniel. Hopefully you can join us again the next call or some after, if you've got time. It seems everyone else really enjoyed your presence. So thanks again, and thanks everyone for joining. I'll see you on the next
Warren.
call,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Cheers, gents.
Keep up the good work, Warren. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Take care,
Appreciate
Daniel.
it.